Hi guys, my name's Trish. I want to talk to you about suicide. If you're watching, I'm hoping you're here because you want some help. Maybe you're hurting, maybe you've been thinking about it, maybe you've had problems with it for years. This is so not a typical video that I would make. My channel is most of the time about beauty, health, motivational, and people like me who are, I'm 51, trying to find tips to help us age gracefully. But I wanted to talk to you guys today about suicide because about a week and a half ago, no, it was 1 week ago, I lost a friend to suicide. And it's really been hard to shake because number one, she was just amazing. I don't want to give too many details for privacy's sake, but in my line of work, she was in that line of work, and she was just known for being so upbeat and vivacious and say what she'd think. And we're all just absolutely heartbroken. And so I had a really hard time this last week just dealing with that for a couple of reasons. Number one, I really cared about her tremendously. But number two, what a lot of people don't know, and I used to be embarrassed to share, but I'm not embarrassed anymore, is I had a lot of problems with suicidal ideations or thoughts most of my younger life. So I'm hoping if you joined in today, you're just looking for some hope. You're looking for maybe somebody to talk to. And I don't know if it'll help anybody, but I just wanted to give you, if you'll stick with me, 10, 15 minutes tops. I wanted to give you some of my short stories about my story and what happened to me and how your life can turn around. I think, I'm trying not to cry, but I think from how I felt, most of us who have been in that boat, and you're not alone, there are millions of people who suffer with these thoughts. I feel like most of us don't want to die. We don't. You might even think you do, but we don't want to die. From my experience, we just want to stop hurting. And not only did I go through this many times in my life, I also worked as an emergency room nurse, and that's where a lot of people come when they're seeking help or their family member finds out and brings them to us. So I've dealt with hundreds and hundreds of people going through these similar things like you might be going through today or tonight and that I went through. When I married my husband and I finally shared some of this with him, I know that he didn't understand. He loves me and he was supportive, but he said, I just don't understand that. You just have to shake those feelings. You just don't understand. And I think some people don't ever go through this, so they can't understand. But what I want you to know is I do understand, and I know that pain inside that hurts so bad, you just don't think you can take it anymore. I think that's what leads us to be cutters or attempt suicide, or even those who are successful. It's so predominant. And I just want people to know that there is help. It's not the solution. There is an answer. Now, I'm not going to promise you that you're going to turn this video off and all your pain is going to be gone tonight or today, but I can promise you, if you will hold on and not do the things that you're thinking about doing, your life will turn around. They will. I promise you. It may take a little bit of time, and you may have to go through a little bit of pain for a little bit longer, but you can't quit. You can't give up. The pain that you feel, it's a lie. It is a lie. Your mind and anything influencing you to try to do this is trying to convince you that you're never going to get out of this pain, that this is the only way out, and that is an absolute lie. There is a way out, and you will get over this pain. Let me share a little bit about my stories with you. When I was very, very young, I was a super overachiever, but at the same time, I let a lot of things rule my life by my heart. And I met somebody once that explained it really well. When your head, which I think my head, believe it or not, even though I'm blonde and goofy, my head is fairly intellectual and intelligent in scholastic matters and in school, but my head has to match my heart. And even though I excelled in school, I had a super high IQ according to my teachers and the test scores. I made straight A's most of my life until I started listening to my heart. When your head and your heart don't align, that's where it can cause you problems. And I found myself in some situations that I couldn't cope with. I was in a very controlling situation that I just wanted to escape and escape and escape. And that misery and that pain of not being able to escape, I hated myself. So coupled with insecurity, and I was very insecure. I believed I was a super ugly girl. I would get embarrassed if my hair looked bad when I was a young girl. I remember being 8 or 9 years old and faking that I was sick, and I would go home because I would go in the bathroom and I would look at my freckled face and my crooked teeth and my super short baby fine hair, and I was so embarrassed, which this sounds stupid to me today, and I feel bad for that little girl because I'm not that little girl anymore. But I hated myself so bad, I would go home from school because I was embarrassed. So that insecurity and being in that controlling environment, it led me to so much pain. I wanted to die. And I'm not going to tell you the things that I tried and did because I don't want to encourage anybody to do that. But I eventually got out of that situation. And after a little bit of time, I saw that my situation changed. So it was a very painful time, but I got through. I didn't accept that lie of the pain hurt so bad there was no way out. There was a way out. It didn't always seem like there was, but there was a way out. Other times that I fought these suicidal thoughts and ideations and attempts were because I had again made some stupid decisions. For somebody who was supposed to be like head of my class, it was embarrassing to me for years that I made some really dumb personal decisions, and I'll just put it short and bluntly. I wanted to be loved, and I just kept looking for the right person, and I just found myself in a mess. I found myself married several times, going through divorces several times, and I was humiliated because I was supposed to be the smart girl, and I couldn't get my life together, and I couldn't seem to have a relationship, and I got where I hated myself so much. The pain was overwhelming. I would just grab my neck and my chest and claw at myself, and I understand cutting, believe it or not, because I hated myself. I wanted to inflict pain on myself, and when I did inflict pain, it was almost a release, which is bizarre and I believe evil and not intended what we're supposed to do. But then later I would sink even lower in absolute depression. But I began to pray, and I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm not some crazy, super, uber spiritual person. But I am going to tell you that I absolutely believe in God. I believe we have a creator. I believe he gives us a lot of freedom on this earth to make our own decisions. And so a lot of time those decisions cause us pain. They almost destroyed me. But I also believe he's like a gentleman. When you ask for help, I believe he does. There were times in my life, excuse me, when I would have a relationship with somebody, and I just kind of felt like I'm not sure if this is the one. This may be causing me more pain. So I finally began to start praying the same prayer. And I would say, Lord, if this isn't the person for me, close the door. You will not believe. I'm not kidding you. Weird things would happen. That relationship would end like in 24 hours. Like this happened several times, so freaky. I began thinking when I date somebody new, I don't know if I want to pray that. Now I'm super grateful that I prayed that, because God knew those weren't bad people necessarily. A couple of them were questionable, but those weren't the people for me. They had a different destiny. It didn't mean, and I've had to think about this throughout the years, didn't mean I was less than the person they ended up with. It meant that we really weren't supposed to be together. And now, and I'll talk about it in another video if you're interested, God brought me the most amazing, kind, sweet husband. And my life, my blog and my videos, all are based around the fact that my life began at 42. No, I'm not saying your life's going to be that long before it begins, but the despair I was in as a young girl, and even into my late 30s, early 40s, that continual despair and thoughts that would enter my mind of I just want to stop hurting, I just want to die, I want to stop hurting. That all ended when I met my husband, and I feel like I asked God for help and he answered me. So I want to close this up. What I want to encourage you is, if you are thinking those thoughts, like my friend evidently did a week ago, and when I reached out to some of my friends on social media and I just asked them to pray for her family and for me because I was so depressed, I noticed in the comments 118 people, 19, prayed for me. But 2 of those people had lost family members themselves to suicide. So it's so rampant. But I just want to encourage you to remember a couple of things. That pain that you're feeling, I get it. But it does not have to end your life. You're going to have to do some steps to get through it. Some hard steps. You're going to have to find at least one, maybe a couple people to reach out to. I was so blessed to have some great friends, but I have 2 specific friends that I feel like saved my life. One of them now has passed away from cancer at a young age, and so that's been a heartbreak for me too. But I'm not back to that place of despair because I know where she's at and I know I'm going to get to see her again. But she took me under her wing, and I was so depressed. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to eat. There was one point in my life where now that I'm older, I'm like, man, I would have loved to lose weight. But in my late 30s, I lost 42 pounds in 6 weeks because I stopped eating, which is a horrible thing to do, and I don't recommend that. It ruins your teeth, ruins your hair. So if you're even thinking that's a great plan, it's not. But my friend Leanne took me under her wing, and she drugged me everywhere. So I couldn't just lay around being sad and depressed, because it's the most miserable feeling. If you're here because of this, I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to face the day. She literally drugged me places. We went and watched some movie together that I remember was just horrible, boring. But she would just take me and grab my hand, and she'd take me to her family events. I didn't even know some of her family, which is funny because I eventually married her brother, but that's a story for another day. She saved my life. My other particular friend that I will never forget, she took it more seriously than I think anybody. She was freaked that I was sharing with her how I felt, and she was on the phone with me every day. She would say, I'll stop what I'm doing, middle of the night. And her love and care for me was instrumental in pushing me past wanting to do something that my whole family would have been devastated. The other things that I did, and again, I'm just giving you suggestions. I'm not saying it will work for you, but maybe some of these things might help. One of the situations where I became very depressed and suicidal was I was in a relationship that I thought was the one. I'm so grateful now that God separated us, because I haven't spoke to that person in 10 years, but we each have went on to live very, very happy lives that we would have never lived had we stayed together. But at that time, everything about that relationship bothered me. So this is going to sound crazy, but I got a different wardrobe. I didn't have a lot of money, so a lot of it I got at thrift shops. Everything I wore in that relationship that reminded me of that person in that relationship, I got rid of. So I got a whole new wardrobe. I surrounded myself with new things. It sounds silly, but it helped me. The other thing I did is I was so depressed, I journaled a lot. And I would just journal and journal and journal and say things that I'd want to say to people that I never had the courage to say. But I would at least journal them. The other thing I did was I got on Google and I Googled scriptures for the brokenhearted, Bible verses for the lost, Bible verses for those wanting to hurt themselves. And lists of verses came up. And I started reading the ones that I liked, that meant and spoke to me. And I printed them off and I cut them up. And I still have them 12 years later in the back is my dresser back there. My top drawer, there's still some wrinkled ones. And I would put those in my scrub pockets. I was an ER night nurse. I'd put them in my scrub pockets, put them on my visor in my car. I'd put them in the kitchen on the refrigerator. Everywhere I went, every time I wanted to cry, which was sometimes all day long, I would reach out and I would read that scripture and that encouragement. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Verses like that. That would encourage me. I also stopped listening to any kind of music that did not encourage me. So I personally, and I love all kinds of music, I still do. I'm an old 80s rock and roll girl. I love 70s music, which was before really I was a little bitty kid, but I love that. But at that time, and still I do listen, but I only listened to Christian music that uplifted me, that spoke to me, that talked to me about God, listening to my broken heart. So basically I filled my mind with positive, hopeful things instead of all the pain. And yeah, it still hurt for a while. But what I can tell you is it eventually faded. The hurt faded less and less and less. And you know what? Eventually, the hurt was gone. Eventually, I transformed my life to something new. So whatever you are right now, whether you think you're unworthy, whether you think you're ugly, whether you've lost your job, your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, I promise you that the pain is real, but it's temporary. It's temporary. If you can hold on and maybe do some of these measures I did, or find some of your own and get these friends and family to support you, and I know there's people in your life, maybe it's only one, but I know there's people to love and support you. If you can hold on, you gotta think about what your life's gonna look like a year from now. And a year's not very long. What's your life gonna look like in 5 years? And 5 years isn't very long. I am now the happiest, most grateful person you will ever meet. I really believe that, because I pushed past that pain and I didn't give up. If you just need somebody to reach out to, DM me in the messages and I will pray for you and I will talk to you online. I love you. I'm praying for you. I don't want anybody else to feel the devastation that my friends have felt this week, and my friends' family who felt like the pain was too strong. I regret so much that I couldn't have talked to her again. She came to my house like a year ago. I wasn't that close to her, as close as I wish I was, but she came to my house a year ago, and I will always wonder, was there something I could have said? And I'm sure everybody in her life is thinking that right now. So please, please don't do that and listen to what I said. Thank you for joining in That's So Trishy today in this special episode. I will see you in another video.